Hello, hello, friends, and welcome to the Wake Up with Giants radio show. I am joined in studio here by some incredible giants, but we are short on time, so we're going to jump right into our centering. We have about a minute here before we go live on Cat Country Radio. So we're going to take 3 deep breaths, breathing in and out, in and out, in and out. I show up today in my vulnerability, and I'm going to step back from the episode today and learn from all of these incredible giants today, hoping to learn as a student and be in the presence of these giants. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I will just be present with the episode. Whatever comes. It'll serve.
Beautiful, Nick. Or Ryan, sorry.
I am just excited to be here and to share and to be present with an amazing giant, Erin.
Welcome, Erin. Please do go ahead and set your intentions for the episode.
Thank you. I intend for it to be whatever is most helpful to everybody listening.
Beautiful. All right, we are going to go live here. We just got our intro playing. So we'll be about 30 seconds.
Yay.
11:30 I'll watch, and Melissa, I can take it from here if you want.
Yeah, as soon as the intro goes.
Hi, social media. I love you people.
I'm going to give you the thumb when you're ready, Nick, to go.
It's better than the finger.
Yeah.
I've had that too. All right. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants Radio. This is Nick Smith. We've got an exciting episode today. We're joined in the studio by myself, Mr. Ryan the Lion Morris, and Erin Donovan, who are glad to have you back on the show. It's been a bit since we chatted. And so today's episode, we're going to talk about how to be a giant by living giant principles. And really, I think we'll just dive right in. If you've got a direction that you want to go in, I know it's going to branch out and go the way that it should. So I'm going to let you take the lead if that works, Erin.
That's great. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you both for having me again. It's always lovely to see your shining faces on a Sunday.
Same.
It's the light. That's the light.
It's the light.
Yeah, I've got these ring lights that are shining.
The ring lights are so amazing. The shining that kids create.
That's why they were invented. Right?
Too.
That's why I wear a hat too, because we don't want to blind our viewers on social media.
There is a limit to the shine.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I have a really pale tummy, so that's why I try not to wear like bathing suits anywhere.
Yeah.
The light just reflects off of it and blinds, the passersby.
Wearing midriffs on the show is definitely, like that's I would blind them too.
Yeah,
it's a very popular thing in Arizona, the midriff. I'm from the Midwest, and that's a rarer experience.
That's called a snowdrift.
Yeah. Which actually brings us
the men are wearing midriffs these days too.
My friend
I'm behind the times.
She saw a man walking down the street in an exercise midriff the other day.
Oh yeah.
I was like, okay, so now it's like it's permeating the whole culture.
Yeah, welcome to the 80s.
I love it.
So actually, this is a great segue because, I'm talking about the Midwest versus here in Arizona. And what we're talking about are cultural differences, which is such a good analogy for, even fashion differences, things that we're doing differently than other people. And a lot of that is based on our principles. It's based on us as people and how we were raised, what we believe is right, what we believe is wrong. So I secretly had 3 girls who lived in Cleveland, including myself, sitting out in my living room last night until midnight chatting about, things here. And we were talking about like the shorts where you can see people's like cheeks, sticking out. And we were like, we all moved here from Cleveland 2 years ago, 8 months ago or 9 months ago, and then 4 months ago. And so we were sitting there discussing like this thing, which is like this exposure that we're not used to. And, what I realized in that is even everything starts to culminate in stories that will create whatever you intend. And I knew I would be on here today. And it's like, you know, when you look around in the world, people are doing things differently than you might be doing them. It doesn't mean that their way is right and your way is wrong or vice versa. It's just like, what lens are you looking at it through? So I wanted to talk about giant principles today, because this lens that I started to view myself through a couple of months ago has really shifted my perspective very quickly. And I know a lot of people who listen to Wake Up with Giants Radio and who love The Giants and the Smalls, the book, which is everyone who's read it, Nick, because it's good. But it's like, how can we be a giant and not just be a small sitting on top of a giant tower thinking we're on top? You know, because that can be an illusion we create within ourselves. I created that illusion within myself for a long time, where it was like, I thought I had a lot of wisdom and I thought I was very awakened in a way where I could share a lot of information and transformation. And sometimes you have to look at yourself humbly and really ask yourself, like, what gives you a giantness within? Like, what actually makes you feel big, you know, and what makes you feel small? And what I've been thinking about, or experiencing even in my life, because what we think we tend to experience is, you know, there are ways that I want to be perceived as giant, but I'm still acting small. So I was thinking about, like, okay, what makes you have giant confidence? Because to me, confidence and a lot of the virtues we think of, principles of confidence, you know, caring, kindness, thoughtfulness, consideration, selflessness, you know, all of these can really help us to consider, like, okay, if we think about those, why do they matter? Why are those giant principles? And like things like selfishness and, you know, inconsideration and me attitude, we don't think of those as giant principles. And so then we get to look and we say, okay, well, what are my giant principles? So I created a list. I'm not going to read them all here because it would probably take the whole time. It's over
I love this.
200.
BT Dub, you might have been the most prepared person ever on this show.
Well, and that's a giant principle.
Congratulations.
Preparation.
Thank you.
No, so these, I'm not going to read them all because, again, these are my principles that I wrote out about a month ago.
You can't see this at home. This is how many pages? This is like 3 or 4 or 5 pages.
4 pages.
Front and back.
Yeah.
And not big font. Like I used to cheat in school and try to make it like, said they 12 fonts, you know, it was like 13 and a half or something.
Here's just like 72.
Yeah. Where they'd have to pull up like 2 fonts and view them side by side just so I could, you know, not have to do as much work.
I'm curious, what kind of principle was that? Was that a giant
that was small behavior.
Yeah.
And it was ingenious though, which is giant behavior.
That is resourcefulness.
It's a double-edged
resourcefulness.
I love the
street smarts. Yeah. I grew up in the mean streets of Salt Lake City.
You know, if you don't have street smarts in Salt Lake, I don't know where you're going to learn them.
Yep.
They throw like balloons and pixie dust and
we know where all the best Diet Dr. Pepper places are.
You know, I appreciate Salt Lake City.
Caffeine free.
Yes.
I went there for the first time a couple months ago, and I had never been to Utah at all. And I loved how clean the city was. It was beautiful. And that to me is people who are living giant principles. You know, they don't leave trash. I didn't see any trash in that city. And it's a city. It's not a small town. It's not New York City. But like everyone is taking responsibility for themselves and their actions and how it affects other people. And they're looking around and they're being conscientious. And really a lot of what, you know, like some of my principles here, I mentioned confidence, radiance, opportunity. Like here I write, I am responsible in my opportunity. I am my source of opportunity. I am opportunity. So
you've tied in. Yeah, you've tied in there. So you're creating a principle and a declaration around that principle of who you're being from that principle. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Keep going.
She's like, no. Yes.
Yeah. We'll keep you on track here. We'll keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Won't stop. I'm just going to stop for 20 seconds and see how everyone feels about it. No, I'm kidding.
I was prepared.
Yeah. So yeah, keep going. So you have the principle, confidence.
So then
you have radiance. Yeah.
are we deluding ourselves or lying to ourselves about how giant we're really being? Because it's like these little things where nobody's watching, nobody knows.
Right.
Like, can we withhold that giantness? Because if we can't do it for ourselves, there's no way we can do it for the world. Like,
right.
It has to start here, and then it can trickle into our family, our neighborhood, our entire community, our city, our state, our country, our world, our universe. Right?
Okay, I want to hit on this a little bit before you move on. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a distinction between agreement, commitment, and integrity. Agreement being what we tell the world we're going to do. Commitment is what we do. Integrity being the difference between the two. Right. And so when you're talking about principles and you're declaring to the world, you're saying, this is who I am to the world, but inside what you do is different. Who you're being internally or how you show up in the world is different. There's a gap of integrity in that. And it's not that integrity is shameful. It's just a recognition that there's a gap between what you say you'll do and how you show up in the world.
Right. And another issue that I found with, the separation, because when you're in alignment with principles that deep down you really believe in and you do them, you are in harmony with yourself. That creates confidence. It creates a self that loves oneself. Like, it creates power and excitement. So there are two pieces to it. Some of the principles that we have adopted are principles of things like scarcity, principles of things, and we adopted these through growing up, and it's nobody's fault. We don't need to blame anybody, but we've adopted them unconsciously. We never consciously chose our principles. So what I'm encouraging the listeners to do here is to actually make a list of the principles you want to truly live by, not the ones you currently are, but the ones you want to live by. Now, here's the trickiest part, and here's the part that I think people start to waver in their principles or they get confused. If people have differing principles than you, it can create conflict if you are viewing your principles as the superior way that everyone must live. Now, so my friend and I started working on this idea of responsibility principles about 2 months ago. My best friend and I had an amazing conversation a couple of days after I started looking at these things. And this conversation had a conflict in it. And the conflict was around her view of what a healthy relationship is based on her principles, and my view of what a healthy relationship is based on my principles and what I am choosing to create in my world. Now, the interesting thing is, I said to her, I understand that. I started becoming more understanding of people's principles because I could hear them as different than mine. And I didn't feel I needed to change them. I didn't feel I needed to defend myself anymore. And what I ended up saying to her is, that's fine. You just have a different principle of what equality is in a relationship. And suddenly we had this conversation where I said, if you look at it through my lens, which is this, 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 and this, of course you would see it exactly as I'm seeing it. And so suddenly there's like this opportunity for us not to just judge what other people are saying or criticize or fear it or be uncomfortable and create conflict. We don't have to. What we can do is understand. One of my principles is understanding. So if I'm not going to live that and listen through her lens, and the less I know someone, in some ways it's easier to do that because we have no emotional connection, but in other ways it's a lot more challenging because you don't really know their principles. But how do we learn them? How do we learn each other's principles? What do you think, Ryan?
I was thinking, like the way of being in action and getting to know that person and talking to them. We talked about this a little bit before on the show this morning with Paul Cardall about just loving people and getting to know those people. You can learn how their way of being, but it's also I look at it too as my view of this. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but this is my view. Is exactly that. My way of seeing somebody is through my lens. So I have to look. I start to look internally at myself and how I'm being, and be conscious of and aware. Because that's the way I'm going to turn around and view like a mirror almost in seeing others. And that then, you know, if I'm being a certain way or being judgmental, then that's how I'm going to see them in a certain way. I'm going to judge them for being them.
So what actual action as a human creates the opportunity to find out about them?
I was also going to say, I love the way that you phrased that before about opportunity, how it created an opportunity. It's not, you have to do this.
Right.
There's a personal choice and accountability inside of that, where you could still be the person that you want, you know, whatever you want to do or whatever you want to be. I loved how you phrased that, because there's choice inside that. It creates an opportunity. It's up to the person, the individual, to choose to go down a certain pathway. But anyway, sorry. Say that one more time too, about what you were asking.
No, I think that's very insightful. But I'm curious, what creates the actual opportunity to get to know someone else's principles? What creates the avenue? How does it happen? How do we get to know someone?
I think you have to.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're
Go
okay, and you can build on this, or
Yep,
you know, I'd love to hear your insight too, Nick. And mine was naturally for me. It's kind of my wired DNA. I don't know. I came out just loving life and loving people, and I am a social butterfly. I think people are freaking weird as heck, but fascinating as crap too. Like they are the most amazing things about people. So I have this internal curiosity, this love of people, and I naturally just gravitate and want to talk and get to know somebody. But I also have learned to listen to people as well. So I'll go out and talk to people in groups. Historically, I get shy, which is weird. You wouldn't think that. Those of you that are at home or that have listened to me in the past, typically in a group setting, like if I go to a convention or a conference or something like that, I'll sit back, I'll be quiet, and I'll observe other people. Then I'll come in. Now I'm learning to put myself out there a little bit more, not worried about the judgments of others as much anymore. I'm learning to shed some of that. But I've found through engagement, through getting in front of people, talking to them, asking them about their life, and then listening, and then finding commonalities is one of my traits. I don't know if that's a trait, but feels like it.
Yeah, you had such good insights in a couple of things you said. I jotted it down so I could continue to listen. You have curiosity about people, and you listen to them, because how are you going to get to know anyone if you're not listening to them? You also said you're a social butterfly. So you're not going to get to know anything about anyone if you're sitting at home watching Netflix every time you're not working. Or, it takes a level of interaction, which I think in this modern day, a lot of us have a principle of connectedness through technology. And the question is like, can we still adopt the principles of yesteryear in some ways and connect with each other without any stimuli that will support that connection, without the need to let me do this thing, or, instead of telling a story, we show a picture of it on our phone and say oh yeah, this. Whereas we're not vividly describing the details. We're not using our creativity and our imagination. We're just oh, here's where it is on the map. This is this thing and this is blah, blah, blah. We're creating a world in some ways that has a little bit less magic if we're not connecting in the old-fashioned connection type ways. So another thing you said is judgment of others. You're getting so much better about letting go and not worrying about the judgment of others. Mm-hmm. And I really want to make clear, because this is very important, and it came to me as you said that, I think that the fear of judgment of others is insecurity. And what breeds insecurity? A belief that someone else's principles or way of being could in any way be superior to yours, which is false.
Right.
And so if we are feeling insecure, there are two things we can do. One is to recognize that there's nothing to be insecure about, because there's no hierarchy in principles. It doesn't exist. Accept The second piece is except within ourselves, there is a hierarchy of principles. So I'm going to illustrate this with just 2 quick stories that will show you this week things that I realized I would have done differently 3 months ago. So the first one is I've been working with this web developer. I wanted him to do some changes to my website that he designed about a year ago. And I asked him how much it would cost. Now he said it would be about half as much as it had cost to design the whole website. And I felt like, well, I just want a couple pictures changed. So I kind of left that email in my inbox because I didn't really want to respond to it because I felt uncomfortable. It was like I was valuing my own comfort versus like, I'm a business owner. And if I have a possible client here, it's really hard and frustrating to me to not have feedback as to why I'm not hearing from them. So I gathered up my courage a few days later, and it took me a couple days, but I gathered up my courage a few days later and I was like, that's really a lot more than I wanted to spend. I had only budgeted this particular amount for it. I had budgeted less for it than what you have quoted. So thank you. I really appreciate you and I value you, but I'm not going to, I'll find somebody else. And he was like, oh, no, name your price. And I enjoyed working with you. And I would like a 5-star review. Or no, that was later. He was like, I enjoyed working with you. So then that sat in my inbox for 2 days. And I would look at it. And I was like terrified because I was literally going to ask a quarter of what he had quoted. And I felt uncomfortable because I felt like, well, I don't want to insult this man. So I also realized I was being selfish because I am valuing my own comfort over giving this man a response to his business, which is his livelihood. So again, I am putting my own thoughts and comfort and security ahead of him. And so I said to myself, you need to respond to this email. And I said the price, and I said, I haven't responded to this email because I was a little bit worried that you would feel insulted with the price after what you had quoted. I said, I don't want to insult you because I think your work is fantastic and I really value what you created for me. If this is unacceptable to you in any way, and what I mean by that is if you're not thrilled to take this work on with the amount I'm offering, I totally understand. I have a plan B, so don't worry about me. Please only accept this if it makes you feel good. He responded within 20 minutes. He was like, you have always been super nice to me. I loved working with you, and I really could use a 5-star review on the site that I found him on, which is like a site that connects freelancers with business owners and things like that. And I was like, absolutely. And he was like, and I would feel happy to do the work for that much money and have that. And I was like, great. So it's awesome because I also got my way, which is not what I needed to have happen. But do you see that suddenly the focus shifted from what do I get out of this and me, and I don't want to be uncomfortable. And so I'm going to protect myself and my comfort and my bubble. And then suddenly in a second, my focus switched from selfishness, because I'm going to call it that because it is smallness, selfishness. And we could even call it narrow thinking, and any thoughts about yourself that are self-occupied are narrow innately. Thoughts of what you want to create, how you want to help people. You can even be egoic in your helpfulness if you're narrowly focused. So here's this narrow focus, and suddenly it expands to see him as I see myself. I mean, this is a simple principle. Many people call it the golden rule. It's basic human decency, as we could also call it. Do unto others as you wish to have it done unto you. We know it intellectually, but are we actually living it? Or are we acting like our principles are actually higher and more giant than their being? So here it shifted. The whole conversation shifted. I got off of myself. I focused on him. Through the email, I communicated that. He felt heard. He felt good. He accepted. I'm not saying it'll always work out the way you want it to, because that happened to be an awesome experience where it did. But wow, how powerful.
So I have a question around the distinction between principles and values. What's the difference?
I don't know that there is a difference.
Okay.
Let me think about that. Let me think. I haven't thought of that before. It's a great question.
What do you have, Nick, on a principle versus a value? Like what's coming into your mind? Because I can see the wheels spinning a little bit too, and wanting to get clear, maybe even inside of your head.
Well, just using the word, for me, value is what is important to you, and principles are the things among those that you grasp onto. And so the word principle is really meaning that, to grab a hold of, the first things you grab a hold of. And so I would wonder if, what would drive you? The values, like you were talking about, sometimes we develop our own. Some are handed to us when we're born. We take on the value systems and principles of those that are our caregivers, whatever that looks like. And then from there, we establish beliefs, and that becomes the foundational operating system of our lives. And so as you get older, when you look at a value, I guess the distinction between a principle would be like the guiding values or the guiding pathways from the values that lead into the beliefs and lead into the predictions and the actions. Does that make sense?
I just had a thought, and I'm curious about this. It's almost to me like the principles are the things you can write down.
Yeah.
But then what makes something actually valuable is the exchange of it. Because like I could have $1 million sitting in a bank account, but if I don't even know it's there, so I don't touch it, it doesn't mean anything until I exchange it. So maybe the difference is a principle is the things you can say matter, but the value, it creates value to others, to yourself, when you actually utilize them.
Okay, this is fun. Let's go with this for a minute. I was watching a documentary last night, and they were talking about the Peruvians, or the Incans, and the Spaniards, and how the Spanish came in and wanted to conquer the Incans because of their gold. And the Incans were wearing gold like it was copper jewelry or some plate jewelry, like it was nothing to them. It was just a spiritual, religious metal, nothing more. But to the Spaniards, it was everything. And so they held different, like it was valued differently. And so maybe the principles would be the bridge between like two different ways of seeing something, like the communicated pathway. The Spaniards came in and said, gold is valuable to us. So we have a principle of destroying you to get that gold.
Yeah.
Versus the Incans are, well, gold is valuable for our religious purposes. And so therefore our principles would be this. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm going off in a different direction.
I think it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like value doesn't exist until someone says it exists. And then it also doesn't have any value until something is exchanged. Because if you just sit with it, it's just yours and it doesn't mean anything. I can have a bunch of valuable books on the shelf, but until I interact with it.
Yeah, there's an exchange.
There's an exchange where I'm actually receiving and then maybe giving that. So I feel like until there's action about it, there is no value. And maybe we're thinking of like, what creates value, and then also what are values, and maybe that's different.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love where you're going with that, because I like the word value as, something that's important to you. I think of the endowment effect, where somebody takes an item and until they own it, it holds a lesser value until they take ownership, at which point it increases in value. Yeah. And so that ownership of certain things in our lives, like some people value money and some people value relationships. And then from those, there would be principles that would evolve from those, that these are my guiding principles. And from those principles, I have a way of being from each of those principles based on that underlying value of what I hold as important. I would almost see the value as foundational.
Yeah.
To the thing that you value, you'll create principles around.
Right.
And then those principles will guide your beliefs.
Value is very misguided. Because again, is it a narrow focus value, or is it a giant focus value?
Yeah, wow.
Is it a small focus, or is it a giant focus?
Some of that could be like maybe a lack of consciousness or awareness. It's the way it's always been done, or the way that it always has been, or you know what I mean? And then when you see a new way of being, or a new somebody else's value system, you can look at that and go, does that align? Does that not align? Maybe you take parts of it or adopt certain things and can see something as more valuable, or maybe the things that you were doing or being weren't as valuable before.
Yeah, I really think that when we think about the values that we may be following, a lot of them are often fear-based. We do them out of fear. So like something we value, I used to value money extraordinarily, and that was out of fear and scarcity and things like that. So I think we have to watch, like really look at our values and look at what we are valuing, because I think you're right, Nick. I think those will create the guiding principles we live by. And some of those principles may be narrow focused.
Yeah, that's
because of the value innately, that trajectory is a narrow experience.
I want to hang on to this thought because we need to go to a commercial break here. So let's carry that forward. We'll pause for a commercial break. We'll come back and we'll continue this.
This is awesome.
But yeah, I think we're going somewhere.
We're going somewhere. Stay tuned.
We're always going somewhere. All right. We'll have Melissa put us on a commercial break. I'm not sure when we'll know.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Thumbs up.
You're there. You're on it. I put you on the
right.
commercial break as you were talking, but I had to get
good
myself back into the stream.
Yeah, for those that are on social media, if you have some thoughts as well that you want to comment in, and we can add those into the dialogue here. But when we pick back up, this kind of, Erin, this is the thought that I'm having, is that the values are the things that are important that you want to protect or hold on to, or that you hold as important. And then you go into the beliefs, which would be the things you hold dear out of all of your thoughts and perceptions. Those are the things you hold dear. And then you create your principles based off those beliefs. And then those principles become who you're being, which is your declaration, your prediction into the world. And then that prediction, that before words, the before speaking it, becomes your speaking and your doing. And then you see the difference between that and who you're being on the inside, your values and your belief system. So I think two people could have the same values, but then have completely different beliefs come off of those values.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's so fascinating because when we look at the beliefs too, a lot of the beliefs, so I'm curious and
you got about 20 seconds, everyone.
Okay, perfect.
It almost feels like the beliefs come before the values, because the beliefs would be what creates your idea. Like if I believe money is valuable.
Yeah, then you're going to, it's a paradox.
Yeah, let's hit on that.
We'll pause for a second here.
Yeah, you have 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Longest 15 seconds of my life.
Three breaths, Nick.
I'll give you the go again when you're ready.
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
Just introduce the topic again, though.
Yeah. Welcome back. I'm Nick Smith with Wake Up with Giants Radio. Our topic again is how to be a giant by living giant principles. We're here with Erin Donovan and Ryan the Lion Morris. And before we took the break here, we were talking about values and beliefs, and this is leading to a paradox. As we took a break here, we got a chance to really dive into it. And what you're offering, Erin, is valuable. I think it's valuable. So I'm taking that in as I would want to have that. I would want to exchange something to have that you're presenting. So in a way, there's value in that. So the dialogue became, well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the beliefs or the values? And then how do those impact principles? Do you want to kind of dive into that and what your views are? Yeah.
So I think our world, and we all actually live in a completely different world. I think we know this. Any of us who have been on a personal journey through life, and I think that's all of us, have probably understood that, Nick, your world is completely different than mine. And not just because we live in different states or different houses. Nick
lives in a really weird world.
Yeah. I mean, look at this.
Made up.
Yeah. Weird. I'm just kidding. I throw my judgment on you. I'm just teasing Nick. I love your world.
He is judging.
He has a great world.
My principles, Ryan, is playfulness. So I feel like
thank you. I'm a jokester. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the beliefs that we grow up seeing happen because we see something happen and then we create a belief. We see something happen, we attach a meaning. That would actually be a better way to describe it.
There you go. I like that.
A belief is an attachment of a meaning to an experience. Now here, I have chills, so this is going to be the good one. Here's the interesting thing. Nothing actually has a meaning. Our beliefs are illusions we've created. They don't exist.
And that's the show, folks. Like,
but
people like eyes just go huge.
But the reason that is because everything that happens, everything we see, everything we experience, this may be controversial, is neutral. It's all neutral. Our perceptions are an egoic perception of what we're seeing. And that comes from fear. The reason is that the fear self, the small self, aka ego is what we could call it, but we'll call it the small self because we're on the Giants and Smalls radio.
Yeah.
So the small self believes that it needs to protect itself. It needs to survive. It needs to ensure safety. There are things that have been adopted because, part of us is like, no matter what, I need to survive. But I'm going to tell you all, in the history of the universe, nobody's done it. So we're like fighting a battle we cannot win. This battle to survive, to protect ourselves, it's not really up to us. Life will breathe into us one day and life will breathe out of us one day, and we won't really have the choice.
Might for you guys.
Yeah, right. Ryan's principle is I'm going to stay alive forever.
Yeah.
Now, if you
I am life.
Exactly. Well, yes, and we are. But if you create a principle,
that's very sweet. That's very sweet, Ryan. Yeah.
Shut up, Ryan. Stop talking.
You are. And now I just keep talking.
I love it. Go. I like this.
But if we create a belief, not a principle, if we create a belief where the belief is I need to survive myself.
Yep.
Again, what principle is this? It's a narrow focus. It's self-focused. Yes, of course you need to eat enough food and drink enough water and like sleep and do the things that our bodies require of us. Yes, you need to care for yourself and tend for yourself. And if a car is coming, you probably want to step out of the way. I mean, yes, there are reflexes and instincts that we all have that were gifted to us. So absolutely follow those instincts and reflexes. Do that. I'm not saying like stand in front of a train and see what happens. You've got to live as a human. However, none of us will survive in the end. Just none of us will. And so pinning your happiness, your thriving on something that's impossible creates a problem. There's no way to do it. There's no way to ensure any kind of protection, any kind of certainty or security or financial security. It can go. I mean, you look at those countries where one day their money is worth something and the next day it's not up to us. You look at businesses where you're thriving and you're doing all the right things, and then a pandemic can come and sweep it away. It's not really up to us. And we're trying to control and manipulate the universe to bow to our whims, which are narrow whims.
Okay, I've got a thought. I'm going to take this in a direction here.
Go ahead.
Okay. So you talk about giving meaning to events, because events are neutral. And so from those meanings that we give, we create experience. And just go with me on this as I walk through. I'm going to get a little deep here. So you create experience, which you hold dear to some of those experiences. You can call those beliefs. And then those beliefs become your guiding principles. And those principles help with your predictions as you predict into the world. So we act based off of predictions. So what we tend to do is we take the remembered past and bring it into the present, create what's called the remembered presence. That's not my creation. It's from research. And so we take the past and we bring it in and we operate from that remembered presence. And so we think we're present, but we're really only present with what we brought into the present, our memories, our experiences. I'll give an example here. My son, who's getting his driver's license, let his permit expire. So he's got driving tests that he's got to do. And he thinks in his world that he can't do it because he has an expired permit. The instructor says, come anyway. You're okay to do it. He says in his world, that's not true. It's illegal. I can't do that. So he predicts that he can't be there. And so he acts from that space of prediction and predicts that he can't be there. And so he doesn't show up and he misses that opportunity. I made him go, right? I said, you're going.
I forced him.
And I said, as a
That's what
possibility,
parents are for.
well, we're trying to help them develop that in their mind, because as a possibility, I said, look, as a possibility, you could be wrong. And your teacher is saying, be there. So we went, and his teacher let him go through that. But he was predicting that it couldn't have happened because of all his reasons and justifications. But he went, and after he came back, and I said, were you wrong? And he said, yes. And he was able, it's not a shame thing. It's just a recognition that sometimes our predictions are off, and then we act on that, and we use those experiences as principles, and they don't serve us. They're not useful. When the outcome could have been different if we would have let go of our predictions based on our past experiences, our guiding principles. So this is an opportunity to say that principles could be relative, they could be subjective, they could be moldable, that you might have some foundational ones, but as you're going through life, you might find out that those are no longer useful, and you become even more giant.
I love that you said the relative piece. There's a story that's coming up. I want to respond to what you said, but there's a story that's coming up that I feel is interesting and important here. This is not my story. I read it in a book, and it stuck with me so much that it literally altered how I viewed the universe. So imagine this scenario. Now, Ryan, are you a parent?
Oh boy, am I.
It's apparent that he's a parent.
It's apparent that I have 5 kids.
Okay, so both of you have children. I want you to consider yourself in this scenario. This is really big. And if you're a mother or father, or even just you can relate to being a child at some point. So in the 1950s, this child was raised on a farm, and they had this old red truck. And this old red truck was so old and so red that it was like a 1940 something truck. And it drove slowly. So the guy said, I grew up thinking the shoulder was a second lane, because we would drive on the shoulder so much that to let people pass. And I just thought, you drove there. That was what you did. And so finally they get this brand new, shiny, brand new red 1958 car. It has the circular headlights, gorgeous, shiny, brand new. And it's the first new car he's seen. He's 17 years old. They've never had a car other than that big truck, that farm truck. So he gets excited, and he gets a little egoic even. And he's like, oh, I want to show this off to my friends. So he asks the dad, can I run some errands in this truck? And the dad says, sure, there are the keys. And he realizes he forgot his wallet. So he goes outside, starts the car, and he's like, oh, I don't have my wallet. I need my driver's license. So he goes back inside, gets what he needs, comes back out. The dad says, oh, did you forget something? He said, yeah, I forgot my wallet. He's like, okay, well, have a good time. Gets out, goes out. The car's missing. It's missing. Now you can imagine, when I picture the 1950s, I picture people being very proud of their new cars. There wasn't a lot of material. I feel like materialism wasn't quite at the level it is now, where there's all these gadgets and things. A new car was kind of like the thing. So the kid is he is literally thinking of running away. He does not know how to tell the dad that the car's missing. And he goes, well, I better find out. Can I see what happened? He sees some tire tracks that look new. He follows them, and there's a 40-foot ravine, and the car is down there. He must have forgotten to put on the parking brake or something like that. The car is in the ravine, and then it goes into the water. It just disappears. And he watches this car disappear into the water. So I want you to think about I want you to be in the father's shoes for a moment and just consider how this would feel, right? So you just buy this new car. You've just had this truck forever. So he walks in, and the dad says, oh, did you forget something else? And he said, Dad, I don't know what to tell you, but I must have forgotten to put the parking brake on, and the car, it's down the ravine, and it's underwater. It's gone. And the dad's reading the newspaper, and he turns the page. He goes, well, I guess you'll have to take the truck. I want you to really think about what it would take to really believe that everything was neutral, to believe that there's no problems in the world, What's coming up for you, Nick?
Yeah. It is. Well, okay. So the construct of easy and hard, right? I could say in this story, in this scenario, it's easy to pass judgment or it's hard to pass judgment. But even that would be like, is that true? Because even that's a construct. So everything is constructed, everything is built. So the idea that there are problems in the world is generated by my thought that there are problems in the world, and then my judgment that there are problems in the world, and my prediction that there are problems in the world, therefore creating problems in the world. So to let go of these judgments that I hold, which are all internal to me, is to let go of all the problems in the world, because the reality is the world is neutral. So the only thing in the way between me and the world are my judgments.
Yes. Ryan, what about you? What did that story?
Man, I was putting myself in the shoes of the kid, and then also as a parent, putting myself in the shoes of the parent, and how I would feel, and what those would bring, what emotions, and what, yeah, I mean, the kid could, I mean, I could just feel like, just, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to go face my dad, and all of this stuff? Like, this is brand new. How much money did this cost? He's going to kill me. I could, the amount of money to pay this off is going to take forever, and just the fear of being like having to go tell his dad. And then from a dad's perspective, like, I was going like sick, like, oh my gosh, like, brand new car, you ruined it. Like, what are you doing? I'm gonna beat your butt, kid. Like, like all this stuff, like all these things, because it hasn't happened with a car per se, like going into a ditch and disappearing in the water, but stuff happens around the house, where they break something. If you have kids, they say things like, you can be rich or you can have kids, but you can't be both, kind of a thing. Or you can have nice things, or you can have kids, but you can't have both. To a point, my walls from about 3 feet down for a long time in my house were like handprints and, beat up and all this stuff. And I used to, it used to drive me crazy. Now I actually kind of miss it, because I remember the times when they were little kids, right? So I started thinking about both sides of that coin, of the way that the dad responded, and it's just an event. It's just a thing that happened. So, well, now what's the next thing? Me, I would have been, good gosh, what did you do? Like, now I'm gonna have to go through all this insurance garbage, all this other stuff.
Let's go through that lens. Let's actually look at it through that lens for a moment, because I think that it's a valuable thing to look at, because I think most of us can relate to that. It's like, why? You broke it. It's ruined. Like, those feelings come up in us. They're very natural for many of us. So let's actually go down that path. And this is the part that transformed my perspective completely. So let's role play this for a moment, Ryan. Dad, the car's in the water. Go ahead. What are you going to say to me? Think about it.
Oof. Well, first of all, like, so now, like, me thinking through this stuff and my personality, I would ask if they were okay. Like, were you in it? Did you go off the cliff? Like,
you hope you would say that.
I think me, I probably,
after a bunch of swear words and a beet red face, it'd be like, oh
no, you see him walking in, he looks fine. You'd be like, what?
This kid's...
But let's go down the route where you don't think of him at all. Let's go down the route where the focus is a narrow, small route.
The narrow focus would be like, I've worked my whole life for that stuff,
Yes.
Like, it took me so long, we had the old truck forever. You did this. Now what am I going to do? It's all, I, me.
Yes. Now listen to what you just said, but pretend you're receiving it as the son. What happens to you?
You ruined my life. I'll never forgive you. I lost I lost the respect of my dad.
You're not smart.
I'm not smart. I did something that was stupid, and so I'm stupid. You adopted on all of these, principles.
Yeah. So let me ask
a way
you.
of being, because it was projected onto you that way.
Right. So this story could have gone very differently, where the beliefs start to be created. So there's an event, the car going down the ravine. Then there's another event. That event is neutral. And except for the child's reaction to it was not neutral. Fear was the reaction. Then you walk into the house. There's another event, telling dad. That's also neutral. But there's the reaction to the event, which is the fear of telling, as well as the dad's reaction to the event, which is either anger or neutrality.
Even one better to me would be, I thought of it this way, where son comes in and you can see the devastation on his face. You can see like, oh my gosh.
Focus with that take.
And then, yeah, right. And awareness, consciousness. And
consciousness,
then,
a giant focus.
Right. And then being able to, as the dad, to be able to say something like, after he says what happened, this the thing, is to go back to what's true. That happened, okay, the car's in the ravine. Yeah. Come here. I could understand how you would, I might get emotional. Some emotions just came up of where if it was, was done differently or handled differently, where the dad said, hey, come sit down by me. And put his arm around you and said, hey, stuff happens, man.
Yeah.
But what's true, I love you so much and it's okay. It could have happened to anybody. Maybe, faulty car, right? That dang Ford or that dang Chevy or that dang whatever.
Let me ask you this.
And then do it, come across different. I mean, think of the, you could tell that person how worthy and amazing they are, and that you love them no matter what happens, no matter what the situation, that, hey, the experiences happen for our learning and our benefit and for our growth. What could you learn from this? What can I learn from this?
And do we even need to ask that question? In some ways, I wonder, because, in some ways, the anger we justify because we say, well, I need to be angry so they see, don't do something like this again. Right? However, so you said things like the insurance, now there's an insurance thing and I work so hard and blah, blah, blah. So let's take one piece at a time, really break this down, because it's super, super, it's such a simple example, but it goes so deeply that I think it can shine light in places where darkness has been. So we look at the simple example. Okay, so let's say the reaction is, where is it? Show me, right? Freak out. What good does the panic do?
Doesn't change the event.
I don't even need to ask what good does it do. What does it do? It doesn't change anything about what happened. Is it actually useful in any way? Or does it do more damage than what previously the damage already is?
So what happens if you go down the road of causing damage? Because there's a tool here in this too that I see. Like, you go down that road and you're angry.
Probably therapy 20 years later too.
Yeah. Well, I would say there would be some cleaning up to do, right? If you go into that and you go into a small space, well, as a principal, if you hold as a principal to be a giant and to show up powerfully and you don't, there's an opportunity for you to clean it up and put yourself back in integrity with being a giant with your purpose. Right?
And they can be the smallest thing. So I'm going to give you one more example, because I just think these examples are we can all relate to them. I have a puppy. She's a year and 2 months. And the last week, she's been waking up in the middle of the night to go potty. And it annoys me because my belief, principles, values are around a good night's sleep. And I need my energy. And you're disrupting me.
Yeah.
What focus is it? It's a narrow focus. It's a small focus. So one night, this has been happening for a couple of days. One night she wakes up and she scratches my eyelid, like trying to wake me up. She's like, just paws at me. And it hurt. And I woke up and I felt rage for a moment. And I wanted to be like, ugh. And then I laid in bed and I softened and I was like, my desire comfort. I've used these words a couple of times. Listen to them carefully. My comfort, my desire, my needs that I'm perceiving in the moment do not outweigh hers. She feels a need. Why do I actually value my needs above somebody or something else's? So I let her out, and right away, usually she'll like sniff around and like diddle around a little bit. She literally went out and peed right away. Like she had to go. Can you imagine like being a little dog who can't communicate? And I'm sitting here feeling—
Can't even make sandwiches.
Yeah, they don't have thumbs.
Can't even open the fridge. She's only 5 pounds. She can't even reach the fridge.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's like she has only very limited ways to communicate her needs, as do most of us. We only have our limited ways. So what does that mean? It means we need to start broadening the lens to encapsulate more people, because giant principles require a giant focus. They require us to get out of our own desires for our own self-growth even. I mean, personal development can be narrowly focused.
Yeah,
what I want abundance. I want this. I want to have a thriving business. I want to have a thriving family. I want to attract the right partner. I want. Me. What does that do for anyone? You know, let's say you want a partner. Great. Well, here you are. Here is your potential partner. If you're focused on you getting what you want, when you meet someone, you're going to be self-absorbed. You're not going to hear them. Ryan so beautifully put it. You need to actually listen to people. What a giant focus requires way more listening than talking. It requires you to open yourself instead of living in your small, focused, self-focused bubble.
So as we look at that, we've got about 4 minutes left here on the show. Went fast. A way of listening as a possibility here for wrapping up the show. How you listen affects what you hear. And so how can people listen in a way, you know, in just 1 minute or less, in a way, or open up, like you said, soften around their listening?
I think the most essential part, so if we take all 3 examples I named today, I'm going to just quickly paraphrase them. The first was, well, I'll do them in reverse order. My dog scratching my face, needing to go potty. I stopped thinking of my own tiredness and let her out. The dad, the car goes in the ravine and he could be angry, but he just sees it as neutral and he thinks of his son and he says, well, just take the truck. And then finally, the first one was, the website designer. I stopped thinking about my own discomfort of insulting him, and I actually give him the opportunity to make a decision, and he chooses. All of these events have something in common, which is that the listening is in what's happening around you. What is happening that you're pretending you're more important than? My hard work was more important than the fact that the car is in the ravine. My hard work is more important than how my sleeping is more important than Squeak going potty. My comfort is more important than the web designer getting a choice. So I think that listening, even if you're a good listener, if you're not opening, would be a better word. If you're not opening to the experiences that are literally right in front of your foot, like someone could drop a piece of lettuce, you know, you could be making a sandwich, drop a piece of lettuce and just kick it under the counter and go, someone else will pick that up. It's these small things where we kind of betray our own principles. We betray who we are. We're not clear. So that's what I think is most important, is it's the listening to your own actions. It's the listening to what's happening around you and to your, not your perceived thoughts about other people's needs, but you listen to them, hear them, and then respond.
That's beautiful. Man, any other thoughts around that? Because that, I feel like that encapsulates the whole experience of giant principles.
Yeah.
Is how you listen affects your principles, and principles affect how you listen. So it's all interwoven.
And everything is neutral except your opinion to it. So one of the things I'm trying to do, just to finally close it all in, is yes, how you act is actually pretty neutral. The universe will continue to thrive without you, even if you're not highly principled. But we're talking about giants here. So if you want to feel good about who you are, though, you need to be in harmony with your giant principles. So and the way you do that is through listening and through the experiences that are presented to you where you don't choose the selfish path.
Beautiful. Guys, we got to wrap up. That was a beautiful show, incredible show.
Love it.
I know we could talk for hours on this, but we'll go ahead. We've got another show following us. I'll turn the time back over to Melissa Ross, and we will talk to you next week on the next episode.
Love you too.
Melissa, do you have the title of that show? Possibly?
I do. Next week's episode, we're going to be talking with our special guest co-host, Terry Britt, and she's going to be talking to us about owning your worth.
Perfect.
So until next time, friends. Okay, you've just got the extra playing now.
Yay. Thanks,
Melissa,
social
thank
media.
you.
We love you guys.
Melissa, I appreciate you just doing this from the background here. And I guess I could have remembered Terry Britt, but then I had a listening that wasn't listening, obviously.
Terry Britt is an amazing giant. She was on Wake Up with Giants TV as well, and so
former Miss America,
Miss Universe.
Miss Universe.
Yes.
Wow.
Both amazing.
Were there aliens on that stage? I'm not sure. I'm
Terry will know.
Lizard people.
We'll ask. Yes.
Reptilians.
Oh, good job, everybody, and thanks, Erin, for your time, and all those watching at home. Man, today's lineup was incredible, and all of the guests that we have, it's interesting always to see different perspectives and the way that the things that they hold dear and the way that they see the world, because you can relate. Different people can see things differently, and then you can shine the light. I liked what you talked about, because Nick talks about this, shining the light on the shadows. Then they're no longer shadows, and the judgment, the fear of judgment, all that stuff disappears because it comes to light. The weight that removes off of people is incredible. So thanks for doing that for me today. That was beautiful.
You're welcome. So
I keep having vision here, and this maybe we need to talk offline on this, is that there are so many talented giants within our group and beyond that haven't even come in yet. They're creating music, they're creating videos, they're creating content like this. I mean, to create a space potentially, maybe we need to talk about that, where they can share that here outside of these episodes. Maybe we talk about that as a group. I'm just going to plant that seed because it just keeps hitting me.
It's a great seed to plant, Nick. All
right,
Giants.
I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to all of our social media friends and wish everyone a wonderful week.
Awesome.
Love you too.
Thank you, Melissa.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.